Hello, Carolyn Banner here of Body by Banner, and we are about to jump into day 4 of the Cut the Confusion course live on Facebook and Instagram. Today we will be talking about keto diets and fats in general. So this is a hot topic that I definitely get a lot of questions about, and it's a really trendy diet right now. So we're going to break down the science and cover some of the pros and cons, some of the history behind it, as well as give you some tools to come away kind of knowing if it's something you should try or completely stay away from, and maybe some ways to make it effective for you if you do try it, and then maybe just some things to look out for if you do try it to just make sure it's safe and done well. So again, I'm a registered dietitian for over 16 years almost. I'm coming up to that mark soon. And it's been too long. I can't believe I'm that old already. So I worked for 8 years clinically at the University of Chicago, working more inpatient with patients from all disease states and backgrounds, from diabetes, end-stage renal disease, burn patients, you name it. And now in the last 7 years, I've been really focusing more on wellness and became a personal trainer and yoga teacher, and have been working one-on-one and in group settings with women from all over the world. Most of it right now, my work is done virtually through my Magic Makers Movement coaching group, as well as one-on-one coaching clients that I take on. And I'll be starting soon, April 8th, I'll be kicking off a brand new option to work with me. It'll actually be the only way to work with me one-on-one in the whole You coaching group that I'm going to be starting. So it'll be a small coaching group of less than 10 women, so who are really committed to taking action over a 12-week period. They'll have access to working with me one-on-one, as well as amazing support of a small group of women who are like-minded and in the same mode of really working to be focused on achieving clarity and cut through all the confusion, right? So right now we're kind of talking about fads, but in the course I'm going to be going into, I'm not going to talk much more about the course. I want to get into keto, but it will be going into the basics like nutrition 101, exercise 101, and also implementation, because that is the biggest piece, right? Like I think we've all been learning from this course is that we have information overload. We're just like, there's too much out there on the internet. And so the goal of the course is really to cut through all that confusion, to give each individual that completes it the roadmap to really know what is the best tools for them to take and implement. So thank you so much for joining. I see some people popping on. Just wanted to give that quick intro. And while you're jumping on, please share in the comment where you're watching or listening in from. I'd love to just have that just share. It's so fun to kind of see where everyone's watching it from. And today I'm going to know to check the comments here on Facebook. Hey, Molly. Nice to see you on there. Hey, Cynthia. Hey, Danley. Okay, and today we have a special sidekick. I'm in a different location. We still have the balloons up from Oli's birthday party last week, which I need to take down. We had a Octonauts underwater theme, so from below, from a child angle, this looks like you're underwater. Bubbles here. So Oli's in the background watching the cartoons because he's homesick today. He got a little bug of whatever I had to. So thank you for your patience with hanging in with me. I had to cancel yesterday, kind of last minute, postpone until today because I got a really nasty cold. And I held out all winter until now. So I'm really grateful that I didn't get any sickness until now, but still got through it. All right, let me take this off actually. And get into keto. So while you're putting in where you're watching in from, please also put in any questions that you have about keto or about a low carbohydrate diet, and I would love to make sure to answer them. Even if I can't answer it right at the beginning, please make sure to ask questions, and I will make sure to answer them by the time we wrap up. Hey, Becky, and thanks for joining in. Again, put in where you're watching in from. It's super fun for others to see that too. So the thing that's been so interesting to me is that the ketogenic diet I was first exposed to it in my dietetic internship 17 years ago at Yale New Haven, and there was a research kitchen there. So that was where a big basis for research studies on diets. And they had a kitchen there that I had to do a rotation in as a dietetic intern, measuring out food for these diets. So there's participants, some of the dietetic interns were in these studies to make a little extra cash, and they had to follow a very regimented diet. So you receive all the food. Another part of the research kitchen was providing food, ketogenic diet for the patients that came in with epilepsy. And so this was my first exposure into the ketogenic diet. Awesome, thanks, Becky. Was as a tool, a treatment for epilepsy, for irretractable seizures. And so they use the ketogenic diet to help treat these patients, these children, and help them to have some relief. And they had some pretty good results from it, actually, compared about almost equal to some of the medications that children were given. So that was my exposure to it originally 17 years ago, and there wasn't much talk about it at all. I think, like at that point, South Beach was kind of popular. Atkins kind of had its day in college right before that for me in the late, early 2000s, I think, and then it's kind of come back again. So keto didn't really come around as a diet until more of like the last 5 to 10 years. And so that's just a little bit of the history of it. And honestly, the ketogenic diet, to give you a little more backstory to it, if you're just interested, because I love these little history parts of it, was that it's actually been a treatment since 500 BC, I was reading. And that is that they used to use fasting or starvation for patients with seizures. They didn't understand a whole lot about it. And so as science developed, right, because with nutrition and science, we're always learning more and adding and changing, they started to use the ketogenic diet as a way to mimic starvation, as a way to mimic that fasting state, because it wasn't spiking the blood sugar. And so it would create this ketosis. So I'm going to talk about what ketosis is, which is the goal of the keto diet, and essentially how you achieve it. Okay, are you guys with me? I gotta get my water. My throat's a little not great still. So give me a thumbs up if you're still with me. And hopefully I'm trying to walk the line between sharing the science and not overloading with too much information about it. So the ketogenic diet, the goal of it is to generate ketones. And basically that's generating your energy from fat instead of, and when carbohydrates low, instead of from carbohydrates getting stored into the bloodstream into our fats, into fat cells. And so the way to achieve it is with cutting down the amount of carbohydrates that we consume. So the typical American diet, Western diet, in Europe as well, I think it's probably a little less, but in the US is around 250 grams of carbohydrates per day. So that's pretty typical intake of carbohydrates. For keto, they're looking to get kind of less is better, but ideally 20 grams or less per day throughout the whole day. And let me just tell you, that's like a banana. So it's really limited. And also you can kind of have different levels, right? So I think what most people are doing generally isn't strict keto. At least what I see on Instagram or people sharing or telling me about is more of this kind of low carb or moderate, more liberal low carb diet. And that's between about 50 grams per day is more of that low carb diet, they call it. And then less than 100 grams per day is more of that liberal low carb diet. So there's kind of a range. But to really be strict and to achieve ketosis faster, because it takes time to what do they call it? The induction period can take up to 3 weeks, and the first 40 to 96 hours can be the hardest period where you're still having those cravings. And then after that, people tend to have less cravings and kind of can feel good generally on this ketosis with having ketosis. But it does take time to build up to and achieve ketosis, and to try and maintain that, you have to, of course, try and stick below that less than 20 grams. So the true keto diet, less than 20 grams a day. So quite strict. And yeah, like I said, a banana, a typical medium to large banana is 20 grams of carbohydrates. I see some people jumping on, some more folks joining, so awesome. Just jump in the comments, please, if you can, and let me know if you have 2 things, where you're listening in from and any questions you have about keto. Ooh, one other question. Let me know in the comments if you've tried keto. This would be great to know. I would love to just kind of pool the listeners. So if you've tried keto, just give me a thumbs up or yes, like if you've tried it. Cool. And thanks for sharing those things, Brigada. I think it helps too if you're, yeah, awesome. It helps to just kind of, when I've watched lives, or I can kind of zone out. So it keeps you all engaged too. Okay, so some people have tried it. That's good, nice to hear. So how does it work? So I'm going to kind of talk about two parts of it. I want to talk about how it works, and also the science that's available behind it. And I think I'll start first with kind of how it works and then go into a bit of the science before we break down like pros and cons and who it maybe shouldn't be for. And how it works, like I said, is like that really low carb, like you're dropping. So we have our macronutrients. And so basically you have the 3 macronutrients, which are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And all of them contribute to our total calorie intake for the day. And so what it's doing is, right, you're just kind of toggling, any diet kind of toggles between those 3 macronutrients, and you have more protein or less protein, you know, more fat, less carbs. And so with the ketogenic diet or the low carbohydrate diets, it's just toggling down on the carbohydrates. I gotta make sure I keep them, the ones I'm referring to, down on the carbohydrates and up on the fat while maintaining moderate protein. So what that would look like in terms of macronutrient distribution is about 5% or less carbohydrate source for your calories, and about 15 to 25% of your calories from protein, and then 75% roughly, whatever's left, from fat. So most of it is fat. It's not a super high protein diet. It's more of a high fat diet, moderate protein, because the reason behind that is if we have too much protein, more than our body needs, is actually we can turn it into carbohydrate or to blood sugar in our system. It converts into spiking the blood sugar, releasing insulin if we have too much protein. So we don't actually want to be super high on protein either if you were going to do a ketogenic diet. And so the theory is, and this is where I'm going to wait and share a little bit about the science, but the theory for the current use of the ketogenic diet, not necessarily for the scientific background of where it was originally used for epilepsy and neurological metabolic disorders, but the current use of the ketogenic diet, the theory behind it is more geared towards weight loss, fat loss specifically, and for improving really just like blood sugar levels and to try and minimize these fluctuations in blood sugar. So the theory behind it is that by only having 20 grams or less of carbohydrates per day, or the less the better, you're decreasing the circulating blood glucose. And so when we eat carbohydrates or too much protein, it converts into glucose in our bloodstream. Hey, hi from India, awesome. And so by decreasing the circulating blood glucose, we switch into fat burning state. So that's the goal. That's the intention behind it. And so, I'm gonna stay away a little bit from the whole citric acid cycle and how we convert acetyl-CoA from oxidizing fatty acids, and that basically leads to ketosis, and using those for ketones to help our brain keep running. My brain's not running too well right now because I'm sick. I'm still getting over this cold. Oh my gosh, you guys, that's part of the reason why I didn't go on live yesterday, was that from this cold, I was just so out of it. Oli looked at me, he's like, "Why are you staring at me, mommy?" I'm like, "I'm just not feeling good." So, but the thing with keto is that instead of using glucose to fuel the brain, you're actually using ketones. And that's why it takes the induction period of a few weeks. And so in general, there's been studies done on this for short term and not for long term. So most of the studies that have been done on the ketogenic diet have been for 12 months or less. There really have not been studies, very many at all, and especially not in terms of just general lifestyle and fat loss goals, for over 12 months. So that's the number one red flag for me, is that we don't know the long-term effects. But that being said, we don't have a lot of long-term studies for most diets, honestly, right? There's a lot of new, there's like nutrition is a new and evolving science. So unfortunately, the studies haven't caught up. They are doing them now, but we don't have all the research yet to know if it is safe long-term. And secondly, more differentiating between like different populations, whether it's appropriate for people with diabetes or heart disease, and those, trying to kind of like break it out a little bit. We don't have that research yet. So that's my number one thing I want to say about it. As a dietitian, as a science-based nutrition practitioner, I just sometimes that's where I'm kind of like, we need to be careful with this. And there's a few people where we need to be particularly careful with who are using it. And that is for people who are pregnant or trying to get pregnant, people who are breastfeeding, or women, I should say, and And those with diabetes that are on medication, so if you're having to control your blood sugar with medication, then definitely, they're definitely populations for sure that need to check in with a doctor, check in with a registered dietitian to, if you are going to do a keto-esque or like a low carbohydrate diet, to make sure you're doing it safely, to be sure that you're getting your physicals done, that you're having your blood work done for your cardiovascular disease, and checking for potential nutrient deficiencies, especially like vitamin D, calcium levels, those kinds of things, to make sure that we're not running the risk, right? We just have to be intelligent about it. We have to be smart about taking care of our bodies and not seeing it as a quick fix. So there's where the mindset piece comes into it. And, you know, I want to just kind of break into a little bit more. I want to kind of cover a bit more of the available science, and then we'll go into some more of my pros and cons. I'm kind of like already jumping ahead of myself. Oh, thanks, Kareem. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for sharing where you're listening in from. Awesome. For those who are just jumping on, you didn't get a chance, have you tried keto? I want to hear. Keto or a low carbohydrate diet. Have you tried it? I want to hear. And if you care sharing, did you find it really useful for you? And I know Mally, you answered on Instagram, so I'd love to hear if it was actually something that was helpful for you, if you could sustain it. I would love to hear a little bit more. So if you did try keto, or if you're interested, I'd love to hear that too. Okay, so what science has been done on it? Well, like I mentioned at the beginning, the original use for the diet was for epilepsy, first controlling seizures. Awesome, yeah. And thank you for that feedback. And so that's the original research. So most of the research that's been done up until like the last 5 to 10 years has been on epilepsy, neurological, you know, TBI, traumatic brain injury. What else? Alzheimer's, some studies on that, autism, and the role that it could potentially, the ketogenic diet could play in moderating that. And so until recently and currently, there aren't any really good scientific studies looking at the role of ketogenic diet on fat loss. So I was just checking through the research. So there's not a lot, like if you go on and look on PubMed, you're not gonna find current research that's really gonna support using it for fat loss. There's researchers looking into it now, so it's coming. And also have been some studies though on blood sugar control. So looking at using a low carbohydrate diet, more around the 50 to less than 100 grams a day, not so strict to less than 20, true keto, in the patient population with diabetes, with blood sugar management. And they found, there's some mixed results. Some found it to be really helpful. Some were comparing it to a low-fat diet, and they saw the same results in terms of weight loss and the same management of A1C levels, which is like a long-term marker of good blood sugar control. So that's kind of where we're at. Like I said, that's a big, like my biggest red flag around it is just to be smart about it and to really check in with your doctor. I would recommend working with a registered dietitian if possible, who can help guide you to know maybe how to optimize the food you are eating so that you are getting the full nutrients that your body needs, and not cutting it short. Because what happens when we eliminate whole food groups or nearly eliminate them, we run the potential of, you can hear Ole in the background. Hey buddy, I'm still on my call. We can run the risk of not getting enough of important nutrients that we need for our metabolism, for our bone health, for our long-term health. So that's my biggest thing. Okay, so what does it include? Like, what does it actually look like on a day-to-day basis? And this is where I can't really like show you visually, but if you look, of course, if you go like Dr. Google, you can go look in Google, and there's lots of great resources out there for the ketogenic diet in terms of like what you can eat, and you can see kind of images of what plates would look like, and breakdowns of kind of a good keto, good in terms of like full nutrient profile of like getting a wide variety of nutrients, and then maybe keto where you're just eating bacon and butter and hardly any vegetables. So there's a lot of ways you can do keto. But the things that are included on it are meats, seafood, so all kinds of meats. So you can have turkey, chicken, pork, beef, all that. And seafood and fish, eggs, lots of eggs usually, butter, and including the egg yolks, definitely butter, all types of fats, coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, every kind of fat you can imagine. And then high fat dairy, so not drinking milk, and then having like low fat dairy options, because those usually include a lot of carbohydrates from the lactose in it or from fillers that they put in. And then nuts, but really focusing not on like cashews and peanuts for sure, like because peanuts are legumes, but on like pecans, macadamia nuts, really high fat nuts, because some nuts can still contain carbohydrates, like cashews especially. And then the ones that contribute some carbohydrate that you have to really be thoughtful about if you're doing a true keto or low carbohydrate diet is our fruits, and that's pretty much limited to berries because those are the lowest carbohydrate fruits. That helps you stay in that range. And above ground veggies. And I like this definition that I saw in one of the keto websites I was looking at, and as a differentiation between low carb and high carb for vegetables. And then I want to say something because there's no good or bad foods. But above ground vegetables generally tend to be those that are more of the low carb options. And they're more watery. They're the leafy greens. They're your Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, peppers. And so when you cook them, they generally give off a good bit of water. The ones that are below ground, like tubers, root vegetables, those generally have more starch in them. And those are a bit more dry. They don't give off water when you cook them. So that's a good kind of way to differentiate between. So that's like potatoes, sweet potatoes, tuber, what other thing? Like rutabaga, not that people eat those that much, turnips, parsnips, I love them, but not many people eat them. A pumpkin too is above ground, but is high starch. Pumpkin, butternut squash, all those. Walnuts, yes, walnuts are high fat, so nuts, so that would be one that you could have. I would have to double check exactly like how much. They might have trace amounts of carbohydrates in it. That was a question from Molly on Instagram. But yes, I believe that they're, yeah, but I'll check, since we're working one-on-one, I can get that information to you. We're going to talk soon on our call. So yeah, please let me know any questions as we're talking to Facebook and Instagram. Let me know anything else that you have questions about, or if you're watching this later, still message me, still put in the comments. I always love to hear your questions, and we'll make sure to get back to you either privately or on the comment. So that's what you can eat. So what is not included? Sorry, this throat. Trying to keep going here. So what's not included? The thing that I like about the keto diet, is that it really eliminates all processed food. All that processed, kind of easy to eat and grab on the go convenience foods that really don't add any nutrition at all, except for gross calories to our diet. So anything processed basically is out the window, because what happens is that they're usually made from things like corn or wheat, or they have fillers that are going to be contributing to carbohydrate content. So almost all processed foods out the window. So that's great, right? It gets us back to real whole foods that aren't going to be full of other things that aren't great for our bodies. And what I like about it is that it can really get you back into eating more vegetables, because of the fact that you're not having pasta or bread or some of these other kind of go-tos, grains that we might use to fill up on during our meals. And so instead of filling up on those easy to grab carbohydrate sources, we are filling in with vegetables. So that's what when you kind of look at like a really healthful, vibrant keto plate versus one that's sort of like just bacon and fats and not much, then that's where I think it can be done really well. It kind of shifts people to really retrain into, well, first of all, learning what foods contain what. So they start to learn what foods maybe have sugar in them or carbohydrates, and they learned also to maybe fill in with those vegetables and use them as the foundation of a meal. And it was hilarious. I read just this morning when I was doing some last minute research, thinking, like they were saying, like, think about vegetables as a vehicle for fat. So I'm like, well, that's one way to think of it. When you're on a keto diet, that's how they're looking for, right? They really want to emphasize the fat. And so if that helps you, think of vegetables, but the more the better. Because all of us, I think honestly, here's a takeaway. Almost any diet can be healthy. Again, it depends on your genetics, it depends on what works for you. But I think that almost any type of diet out there, as long as you are emphasizing vegetables and like really trying to get in as many of them as you can, whether they're a carbohydrate source or not, can be a healthy diet. because really that's the gold standard. How many vegetables, how many living things are you eating per day? That's gonna, I think, that's the true marker of a healthy diet in my book. So that's a big takeaway for you. So, okay, so we kind of talked about what's included, what's not. In terms of beverages, just really quickly, water is the best choice. Tea, unsweetened coffee, bone broth is a big one, the ketogenic and paleo diets. And yeah, that's about it. No other drinks can really fit in there. Some people will justify like alcohol in there, and that for me, it's actually, when you consume alcohol, there's studies that show that you actually store a lot more fat. So if you're looking for fat loss, having a keto diet and you're being so careful about it, and then having alcohol like as some of your carbohydrates, for me, it's just like, what's the point, kind of, if you're really so goal oriented to fat loss that you're justifying a few of your like very, very small margin of carbohydrates to that, and it actually can store more fat for you, then it seems like it's kind of fighting against each other. So I would rather that someone would use their small percentage of carbohydrates to have some really good, like have berries, or maybe having a little bit of those carbohydrate, like root vegetables with it, like a sweet potato or something that's going to give them so much good fiber and vitamins and nutrients. Okay. So I want to just reemphasize, if you are interested in doing this, if you are doing it, to please let your doctor know. Work with them to make sure you're checking your blood levels for your your cardiovascular panel, so your HDL, your LDL, your cholesterol levels, your triglycerides, just to keep a marker on it. Because this is where I want to shift into, of like whether you to know it's for you or not. Oh, I missed this. Danley wrote, I tried keto but felt sluggish all the time, and like my heart had what she said was that she felt like her heart had an irregular heartbeat. And so yeah, that's a really good way that you listen to your body that it wasn't working for you, because that's clearly a sign that something wasn't lining up for that. Awesome. Any questions so far? You guys with me? Give me a thumbs up if you're with me. Thank you for hanging in with me, and thank you to Oli. I'm so proud of him for hanging on, watching his show over there. Okay, so let's talk about how to know for you if it's a good fit. What are some things that you can check in with? Yeah. Always beatboxing back there. So how do you know if it's a good for you? So I've, again, emphasized the first 2 days when we went over intermittent fasting, and the day before, yesterday, when we went over kind of like high interval training classes like Flywheel, Soul Cycle, Orange Theory. How do you know if it's a good fit for you? I call it the filter of you. So basically asking yourself some key questions, or working with a coach to ask them too. Hey buddy, please turn it down the volume. Thank you. And to know if it's a good fit for you, I always ask, do I even like it? So ask yourself, do I even enjoy this way of eating in terms of kind of the keto diet? Do I like it? And can I sustain the ketosis? Because really, if you want to have the benefits that they're saying, right, from having the ketosis, having your brain being fueled by ketones and those fatty acids versus carbohydrates, and pulling the fat out of your fat cells for energy versus storing carbohydrates as fat. If you want to have that benefit, you've got to maintain the low carbohydrate, at least less than 100 grams per day, which is more than half of what most people have every day. So in order to see those results, we generally have to maintain that. People who do keto and then come off of it and go like on vacation and start eating normally and drinking and having a lot normally, I say in air quotes because it's all relative, but maybe go back to having more carbohydrates, maybe have pasta, maybe have pizza, all those kind of treats that we might have more on vacation, donuts, all that kind of stuff, and they gain the weight. And a lot of it's water weight, because carbohydrates are hydrophilic, where they love water. So you're gonna just like grab onto all that water like a sponge. So part of it's water weight, and if you go back to keto, you'll probably lose some of that weight again. But again, are you able to sustain it? I think that it can be a tool for achieving really good fat loss. If you're able to, you find it enjoyable, you find it sustainable for at least like maybe 6 months, you can do it and really achieve significant fat loss, because that actually, and then you can maybe switch over to maybe a more liberal low carbohydrate diet and free up your diet a bit more, but still maintain it pretty low carbohydrate. and still maybe keep working if you have a lot of weight to lose, that could be a really good tool. And I know that was, I think, really helpful for you, Molly, for what you mentioned too in your response, in terms of you lost 85 pounds after surgery, and that's after weight loss surgery, and that's amazing. I think it can be a really useful tool, again, for people who aren't pregnant, breastfeeding, have a history of diabetes or hypertension. If you're on medication for hypertension, that was a red flag too from some of the studies. And you're following with the doctor, right? Having blood work done, and working with someone who is going to maybe keep an eye on whether or not you're getting enough nutrients in your diet following the low carbohydrate diet. So I think it can be a useful tool for people who have a lot of weight to lose, and to do that for, if they're able to maintain it, if it's something that they enjoy, if it's something that they find sustainable, to achieve a certain amount of fat loss. Because what happens, it helps to shift your hormonal milieu, like in your body, so that you start to crave those sweets and those other things less. And you actually are changing, because fat becomes an endocrine organ. And what that means is that it's like the pancreas and the other endocrine parts of our endocrine system, that like the thyroid, it actually starts to secrete our fat cells when we have a lot of them. When we start to be, like with obesity, we start to actually give off signals that we need to eat more. It actually makes it so much harder to lose weight. So if it's possible for someone to use keto or a very low carbohydrate diet to kind of kickstart that initial fat loss, but the most important thing is that once they finish, once they transition, that they don't just wildly, like it's not a fad, right? It doesn't like swing wildly back into like a more typical American diet. It has to be maybe where we liberalize a little bit and really focus on the nutrient quality of the food and other things, right? Like movement, exercise, overall lifestyle, like getting enough sleep, stress. So like what I've mentioned already with intermittent fasting and with these high intensity interval training classes like Orange Theory, it can be a tool. And right, we have these tools in our toolbox. And so I want to give you the information about it, like science behind it. And then so you can know whether or not you even take that tool out of the toolbox. And if you do, kind of like when to do it, when might be the best time to do it, and how to do it well. So I think that's the number one question, is like, okay, can I do this? Do I enjoy it? Is it sustainable? I find that it can be really helpful for that, for when people have a large amount of fat to lose. And then you do need to be thinking about the long term still. It's not a fad. Do not think of this as a fad. Other questions to ask yourself, like putting it through that filter of you and how you respond to it, because right, there are a lot of different options, a lot of different diets that can work. And I think, you know, some people do better with more carbohydrates than others. It's just they have a more insulin sensitivity. They can eat and get away with eating more carbohydrates and not have this huge spike in their insulin as much as somebody else. So how you know whether or not you maybe are more sensitive to carbohydrates is paying attention to the biofeedback clues we've already talked about: hunger, energy, and cravings. And then I add on to that the psychological effect of it. So how are you handling it? Are you obsessing more? Are you like fixated more or less on food? So in addition to looking at your hunger, is your hunger more or less? Like, are you more hangry or are you more like controlled with your hunger? And looking at your energy, is your energy more stable or is it kind of fluctuating more? You want to obviously be looking for more stable, sustained energy. With your cravings, are you having more cravings? Are you like feeling just like at the mercy of your cravings more, or are they actually better controlled? Because for some people with keto, they actually have better control of their cravings. So if that's the case for you, then maybe it's a sign that it's a good fit. It's Lily back there. And then the last one that I like to ask is the psychological effect. How is it affecting you psychologically? Are you feeling it being more of a burden? Because that was the number one thing, kind of when looking back at studies and why families, when the original use for epilepsy management and helping to manage and minimize seizures, was the reason that they usually dropped off from doing it was because it was such a toll on the family. It was a lot to manage, especially for kids. And so they were able to sustain it. It was a lot more time, it was a lot more effort, a lot more energy, and it was just psychologically because they felt like they were having to control what their kids were eating. As an adult, and you see these stars like Jenna Jameson and other people who are like promoting the keto diet, especially the stars, you guys, they have like chefs, they may not even have a dietitian working with them. They have resources available to them. They not only have money, they usually have more time, and they usually have staff that are helping them cook and everything. So just keep that in mind. Like people who are promoting it sometimes that are high profile, just, they might not have as much of the burden that you or I might have. And so I think that's important. What's the psychological burden on you? And then the last thing with everything, in terms of like, are you seeing the goals? Are you seeing it helping you reach your goals? Are you seeing the results that you want? Are you having like the mental and physical improvements that you're looking for? Are you having more mental clarity? Are you having better energy? Are you losing weight if that's a goal for you? Are you losing the fat that you want to lose? Like especially around the middle. Like if you're losing fat around the middle, that's a good sign that you're losing, or weight around the middle, that's a good sign you're losing fat and not muscle. So just some things to keep in mind. Do you like it? Is it even sustainable? Are you looking at it as a fad or as a long-term solution? If you're thinking about it as a long-term solution and lifestyle change, then go for it. If it's a fad and quick fix, I would say no. If you're pregnant, breastfeeding, trying to get pregnant even, this is anecdotal, but it's not backed by science, because again, I don't think we have the science yet to back it up or to kind of show, is that it can really be, I think, a little bit more dangerous for women to follow keto, to have that strict of a carbohydrate restriction, and because it can definitely throw off the hormones a bit more. And so I don't work specifically, that's not my area of expertise, but I work really closely with Stephanie Kleinberg, who I mentioned before, who works with women on creating healthy hormone levels for, if they're having miscarriages or if they're having irregular periods, all of that. And she's seen so many women come to her that follow the ketogenic diet and have these hormonal imbalances. And as soon as they go off the ketogenic diet and include really high fiber, vegetable-based usually, sources of carbohydrates, their symptoms reverse and they, go back. So I think that it just, again, you need to pay attention, be working with someone if you're thinking of this as a lifestyle change. So just want to mention that. And but again, there's really not, because it's more of a new science. Nutrition science is always evolving. We don't have the science yet to back up pro cons really clearly yet. That's where it's really important to put it through the filter of you even more, and pay attention to your body. Pay attention to whether if you feel good. Are you having changes in your period? That's a sign. That's like a, what do I call it? Like oh my gosh, why am I blanking right now? A vital stat for women is whether, like, the health of your, like, the regularity of your period is like a vital stat that we need to be paying attention, just like your blood pressure and heart rate and those other things. So let's not ignore the signs that our body is giving us. It's not worth it, right? I think sometimes the reason why people start keto is to kind of look out after a quick fix, or to see that dramatic body transformation, like Jenna Jameson, who's been on the news lately about her losing all that baby fat using the keto diet. And I'm happy for her if she was able to do that. But and I think the way she's probably doing it is she has a lot of support, and so she's able to get in a lot of the kind of the healthy full plate of vegetables along with those fats. So but I think, like, really getting clear on whether you feel like you have to change your body to fit the image of like social media or someone else's image of what you should look like. That's just a time to reflect. Like, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this to fit some kind of mold that society is putting on me? And, in that case, like, I would just love to send you some encouragement and love that there's more to it. It's more about eating healthy and living a full, fulfilled life, and not necessarily how we look. I totally get it. I chased that for a long time. I chased that in my 20s, hardcore, in my teens and 20s. And so I understand that pull, because it's so strong, especially for women. Like, we are supposed to like fit this image of being fit and thin and all these things. And so if the ketogenic diet is going to give us that, then we're tempted to jump into it. But I think, it could be helpful. Like I outlined, if you're jumping in later, go back and watch what I shared earlier. It can be done well, and it can be for some people. But again, it needs to be thought of as a lifestyle change and long-term sustainable change rather than just a quick fix done at the whim or done at the desire to fit into, I think, what society wants us to look like. We deserve more than that, ladies. Totally do. Stand up for ourselves. All right. Oh, I meant to cover too. I want to cover really quickly fats, like just what to use, like when and what to use. And because I get questions about this too, and I thought it would tie in really well with keto, since keto is 75% or more fat. So what fats, what cooking oils and things should we use? And here's my takeaway point. In a minute, big guy. In a minute, sweetie. And Oli's like done, so I need to finish up soon. But is to have variety. So here's the takeaway point. Too long, didn't read. Is that have a variety, because there's, you know, some like the whole thing, like, right, like the last few months ago they came out with coconut oil is poison, and then before that it was like this magic bullet. So the number one thing is to have variety. Have in your cupboard and use, you know, I'm going to break down a bit about when to use what, but the fats that I have in my cupboard are in my pantry and in my fridge are coconut oil, organic, as unrefined as possible, and extra virgin olive oil, organic as well, avocado oil, organic cold pressed, ghee, and then for my fridge I have grass-fed butter. And I sometimes will use bacon, like grease from cooking bacon. I'll skim off and use that to sometimes cook like eggs or things like that. And I will use them, right? I don't use just one all the time. I mix it up intentionally. And the reason is that they all provide like a little bit of benefits, and then too much of them too can be, of any of them, or of anything in general, cannot be great either. So that's why I encourage variety. And then in terms of high fat versus high fat cooking ones I use are coconut oil. So that's where, again, where you want that higher smoke point. So if I'm going to have the oven at like 400 or more roasting vegetables, or I'm going to like do like a quick wok, kind of like saute at a high heat, I use coconut oil or ghee, or what's the other one? Oh, avocado oil. I was like, I knew I'm forgetting something. So avocado oil, coconut oil, and ghee are my go-tos for higher heat. And then I use extra virgin olive oil if it's a lower heat. And then I also will use it for salads. And I use grass-fed butter like to add to like a sweet potato, for example, after I cooked it, or broccoli or something like that. So again, mixing it up a little bit and getting the variety is, I think, really important. Any last questions, please put them in the comments. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. You all are amazing. But please, if you have any other comments, questions, do you guys feel more, oh, hey, Juanita, I just saw you. Do you feel like you've gotten a little bit more clarity around keto from what I've shared? Does it seem like, okay, yeah, I get it a little bit more? Just a minute, buddy. We're almost done. Ollie's a trooper. He's homesick today. I'd love to know if it helped answer some of your questions around it, or if you're like, it's for me, I'm all on board. I want to know that. I want to know, because it can be done well, I think. Or if you're like, no way, not going to do it, definitely not for me. What are your thoughts? Where are you guys at now that we're wrapping up? Tomorrow will be our last day, so I'd also love to hear, and I'll put a poll up soon, what you want to hear more about. Some of the things that we're going to kind of touch on, a couple of things I think in the last day. I'm definitely want to cover vegan diets, like veganism, vegetarian, and some of the science behind that. And I want to touch on cheat meals, so this idea of like having a cheat meal or not. And there was something else that came up too. But let me know. What else do you want to hear about? And make sure we can cover that on our last day. So thank you so much for your attention. If you haven't already, did I not include it here? Let me do it now. The sign up for the, just put it in the comments now on Facebook for you to join into the email list for this course, which I will be sending out the replay of this full video later today, along with a bonus. And the biggest bonus that you can take advantage of is access to a diet and nutrition audit from me. So I'll send you the exact log that my one-on-one coaching clients use. You can fill that out, send it back to me. I'll look through it and see if there's any areas where you're like, oh, you can tweak this a little bit. This is an opportunity I see here. What stands out to you? Kind of as like, now that you've had some time to reflect, you have a little bit more awareness by filling out the form. Because just filling out the form, you all, is like so, I think, helpful for getting that awareness piece in. They're just like, oh, I see myself doing this. I didn't realize. Because basically you're looking at how you sleep, how's your stress level, what did I eat for breakfast, and then 2 hours later, how did I feel after breakfast? What were my energy levels like? What was same for lunch and dinner or any other meals that you eat? What did you do for movement and exercise, and how was your pre and post workout? Like, did you have anything before? Did you have anything after? So it just gets you thinking and reflecting on those things so that you have a better idea of whether it's, things are working or not for you. And then we'll get on a phone call for 15 minutes, go through it really quickly, and leave you with, I know, I'll be there, and then exactly like 1 or 2 things that you can take to implement. All right, I gotta go. I gotta go be with Oldie and go do my mommy. But thank you so much for joining in, and we'll be back tomorrow for the last day, and can't wait to dive into some more trends. All right, bye guys.